Welcome to Shadow Fable. Don't forget to subscribe. Adam Rankin had always thought of himself as a man who recognized the shape of his own fate. Years of poring over insurance claims had taught him that everything, homes, businesses, people, was prone to unexpected ruin. He'd learned to read cracks in drywall like stress fractures in a human psyche, an unnoticed weakness waiting for the slightest pressure to break. So it felt almost predictable when he found himself driving down a desolate two-lane highway under leaden clouds, heading for a motel on the outskirts of a town he'd never heard of. An odd call from his boss had sent him here. No explanation, just a cryptic text that read, "Check into the Tilden Motel. Ask for room 10. It was a bizarre request for an insurance investigator, but Adam had been around enough corporate corners to suspect this was some hush-hush matter. Possibly a quiet settlement or a hush-money case. He couldn't have guessed it would lead to the strangest night of his life. He arrived shortly after dusk, headlights slicing through the motel's neglected parking lot. The place had a retro neon sign that flickered weakly. Tilden Motel. No cars, but his own. The air felt too still. Gravel crunched under his shoes as he stepped out and glanced around for signs of life. A single, sputtering overhead lamp illuminated the check-in office. Inside, the front desk looked abandoned. An old-fashioned bell sat on a chipped counter, behind which hung a series of large plastic room keys. Adam eyed them. Every key from 1 to 12 was there. But right where 11 should have been, there was only a faded patch of pegboard with no label. He reached for the desk bell and rang it. The clink of metal echoed painfully in the silence. A woman in her 60s, wearing a baggy cardigan, eventually shuffled in from a back office. She introduced herself as Irene, manager and part-time night clerk. Wiping her hands nervously on her apron, she asked for his name. Adam explained he had a reservation under Rankin. Irene flipped through the tattered ledger with slow, methodical turns of each page. "Room 10, right?" Adam said, hoping to speed up the process. Irene's eyebrows twitched in mild surprise. "No, sir. I have you in room 9, she replied, voice threaded with apology. "Our 10th room is, well, it's not available right now. Renovations." He gave a confused frown. "My boss specifically said room 10. Irene's gaze drifted to the ledger in her hand. She looked uneasy, then shook her head. "My records say room 9. Adam opened his mouth to protest, but stopped. She seemed so resolute, and the last thing he wanted was a confrontation. He had enough on his mind. "Fine," he said. "Room 9, then." With effort, Irene lifted a key from the wall, slid it across the counter, and tried for a smile. Her eyes darted to the space where the missing 11 label would be, but she said nothing more. Outside, the wind had picked up, rattling the metal railing. Adam walked along the row of motel doors. A single overhead light buzzed and flickered, casting everything in disjointed shadows. He found room 9. It smelled faintly of stale cigarettes, though a no-smoking sign was taped to the door. Inside, the bedspread was a washed-out floral pattern. The single lamp barely lit the corners. He put his bag down, drew the curtains, and collapsed onto the bed with a groan, feeling the tension in his neck. Usually, he'd pull out files or open his laptop to review whatever insurance matter had brought him here. But tonight, there was no file, no case name, no clue. Just the odd directive from his boss. He studied the blank ceiling, mind drifting. The musty odor mingled with a faint chemical smell, like bleach covering something metallic. Then he noticed, by the dresser, wedged under the door, was a small square of cardboard. A motel key, scuffed plastic attached to a ring. He got up, bent down and recognized a gold engraving that read, Room 11. He blinked. He had just seen the key rack in the lobby. Room 11 had no label, and Irene had said nothing about it. A prickle of unease rolled up his spine. Curiosity battled caution. He had been told to ask for room 10, not 11. Why would it appear here, now, slipped under the door? A mistake? A prank? Adam locked the chain on his door, then tested the key in his hand. It felt cold, heavier than the other motel keys he'd held. He found himself stepping back into the corridor, scanning the row of rooms. They went up to 12, but skipping 11. Painted on each door was a black stenciled number. 10. 12. No, 11. The gap was obvious. There was just a meter-wide span of wall between doors 10 and 12. But if there was no door, how could there be a room 11? He wanted to laugh it off, some local quirk. A quick search online might yield a novelty story about a motel that superstitiously skipped 11, like buildings that omit the 13th floor. But the key in his hand felt almost urgent, like an invitation or a warning. He took a breath, tried to quell the sense of being watched, and decided to check in with Irene. He found the office door locked, lights off. A single piece of tape on the window read, "Back soon." She had vanished within minutes of giving him the wrong key. Typical, he thought. But this was more than typical small-town inefficiency. Something about the place felt orchestrated, like pieces moving around him. Back in room 9, he flicked on the TV out of habit, only to be greeted by static. No cable, or maybe not even local channels. The hush of white noise filled the space, intensifying the emptiness. When he turned the TV off, the silence felt louder. Adam tried to shrug it off and forced himself to rest. He would handle the confusion in the morning. But he couldn't sleep long. Dark dreams of abandoned hallways and hidden doors spun in his head. Waking suddenly, he found it was nearly 2 a.m. The motel was silent, but outside, a single light was on. Somewhere near where room 11 should have been, if it existed. That faint glow seeped into the corridor. Against better judgment, Adam got up, slid into his shoes, and took the room 11 key. The corridor was chilly, and each of his steps echoed as though the building were hollow. He reached the spot between 10 and 12. The plaster looked normal but slightly misaligned, like a veneer or a sealed entryway. He felt along the seam with cautious fingertips. A sharp click made him jump. The wall seemed to shift inward, leaving a crack wide enough to slip his fingers into. Heart pounding, he pulled, revealing a narrow door behind that chunk of plasterboard. The paint peeled at the edges. Sure enough, an antique doorknob glinted in the half-light, the faint shape of a tarnished metal plate stamped with the number 11. Adam stared, mind reeling. A door hidden behind a false panel, as though the motel owners had tried to erase its existence. He glanced at the key in his hand, then at the doorknob. "Why am I doing this?" an inner voice shouted. But he had come too far to ignore it. He slid the key into the lock. It turned with surprising ease, and the door pushed open onto stale darkness. He fumbled for a light switch. A single overhead bulb flickered alive, illuminating a room seemingly stuck in another era. The wallpaper, once pastel yellow, had darkened to a musty brown. The furniture looked decades old, the bed stripped bare, and a battered dresser loomed on one wall. There was a thick layer of dust everywhere, as though no one had stepped inside for years. Yet something about the space felt used. Footprints disrupted the dust near the bed. A small desk lamp was on, casting a sickly amber glow. As Adam ventured deeper, he noticed pinned to the walls were old newspaper clippings. some crumbling at the edges. Names and grainy photos of people who'd gone missing in the area over the last 20 or 30 years. The pinned articles described robberies, homicides, suspicious suicides. Tilden Motel was mentioned more than once. Adam's pulse hammered. This was a hidden shrine to real-life crimes. He recognized some of these cases from his professional life. Claims that had crossed his desk regarding bizarre, unsolved disappearances. A teenage girl gone missing in 1989. A traveling salesman never checked out. A teacher rumored to have a meltdown while staying at a roadside motel. All linked to Tilden, or perhaps not officially linked. But this plaster-walled room told a different story. On the desk lay a battered guest book. Leather cover, half rotten. Trembling, Adam flipped it open. Columns of names and dates scrawled by different hands filled each page. Some entries were decades old. Inexplicably, Adam spotted a fresh entry at the very bottom of the last page. A Rankin check-in date, March 18th. Next of kin, he stared, heart pounding so loud it hurt his ears. Had someone forged his signature? It looked eerily similar to his own, though the pen strokes were heavier. This wasn't coincidence. He was being lured here. Something purposeful was at work. Then came the faintest sound from the hallway. A dragging shuffle, like footsteps across worn carpet. A chill raced through Adam. He snapped the guest book shut, pressed himself against the wall, listening. The door was slightly ajar. Soft light spilled in from the corridor. He sensed someone out there quietly crossing the threshold into room 11. He held his breath. The door creaked. A silhouette, thin, unsteady, slipped into the gloom. In the flickering overhead bulb, he recognized Irene. She looked older than before, eyes glassy as though she walked in her sleep. She seemed neither surprised nor afraid to find Adam in the hidden room. If anything, she looked resigned, carrying a small leather folder in her hands. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, voice trembling. "No one is supposed to see room 11, not anymore." Adam struggled to keep his tone calm, but adrenaline spiked through him. "Why does this room exist at all, Irene?" She inhaled, ragged. "Because secrets do, because guilt does." Her eyes flicked to the pinned newspapers. They used to say this motel was cursed. People who came here were running from something. Then they never left. She stared at him. "Are you running from something too?" Adam clenched his fists. Memories of a wrongdoing he'd buried threatened to surface. 2 years ago, he'd tampered with a major claim file to protect a corporate giant from paying out. That client had been implicated in a chemical spill that left several families homeless. And Adam had coldly done his job, burying evidence, twisting facts. He never forgot the faces of those families. Sometimes he dreamed about them. The shame still gnawed at him. But it didn't explain this. Who pinned these articles? Who's forging my name in that book? Irene opened the leather folder she'd brought, pulled out a photograph. It showed a half-lit motel corridor, shot from an odd angle. Adam stood in the photograph, captured mid-step. Judging by his clothes, it could have been earlier that night. "There's a reason your boss sent you here," she said. "The company's known about Tilden for years. Some arrangement was made to keep it quiet." Her voice quavered, as if reciting an old confession. "They let Tilden do what it does, a trade for silence." Adam stepped closer, desperate for answers. "What do you mean, what it does?" Her trembling hands placed the photograph on the desk. "In my father's day, there was a conspiracy that Tilden was built as a way station for people who needed to vanish, or be vanished. We had rumors of blackmail, cults, corporate hush-ups. I was just a child, but I saw guests come in with fear in their eyes and never see daylight again. Tears formed at the corners of her eyes. Room 11 was where they kept evidence, the names, the footprints. The walls have seen crimes I can't repeat, and no one on the outside dared ask questions. Adam's stomach twisted. So my company used this place to... She nodded. To remove complications. Insurance payouts, suspicious claims, whistleblowers, people who threatened bottom lines. Some never got to speak. She tapped the guest book. They were signed in here, unofficially, and never signed out. The panic in Adam's throat felt suffocating. But I'm not a threat, I just do my job. Irene's lips tightened into a sad line. Maybe you know too much. Or maybe your time has run out for something you've done. She whispered then, a shaky breath. They told me you might not make it out by morning. She pressed a key into his hand. A different shape, more modern. There's a back exit near the laundry room. Not even the manager's aware of it. Go. Now. Adam was about to bolt when a new voice spoke from the doorway, low and gravelly. No point running. A man in a gray suit stepped into the flickering light. His face was calm in that corporate way Adam recognized, like an executive used to controlling situations. He carried a sidearm and a half-visible shoulder holster, an ID tag clipped to his belt. Armistead, Regional Director. Adam realized with sickening clarity that this was the man who oversaw many high-stakes insurance accounts. The man who quietly made big problems disappear. Irene gasped, stepping back. Adam's eyes darted to the side door, but Armistead lifted his gun in a casual arc. No sudden moves. He sounded almost bored. I knew you'd come here, Rankin. I engineered the tip from your boss. We needed to see if you'd behave, or if you'd try to uncover truths better left hidden. Why? Adam forced out. Because you're sloppy, Armistead said. You left traces after that chemical spill cover-up. Then you started sniffing around old claims. We can't allow a liability of your enthusiasm. Adam's mind spiraled. They had set him up. This entire motel was a honey trap, a place to snare employees who knew too much or who might cause trouble. He felt anger flare, but also guilt. He had been digging back into old records lately, questions gnawing at him. Maybe that set off alarms. And here they were, about to end him in some quiet corner of an abandoned room. Irene, trembling, spoke in a plea. He hasn't done anything beyond what you told him. Armistead silenced her with a glare. I keep the arrangement. Tilden keeps quiet, remains off the map, so to speak. He flicked a glance at the peeled wallpaper and the pinned articles. Should have been sealed for good. Adam forced his voice steady. So you're just going to make me disappear? Armistead leveled a cold stare. That's typically how it goes. We prefer not to leave loose ends. The way he said it was clinical. A man used to signing off on quiet executions. But I might consider an alternative if you listen carefully. He paused, letting the tension soak in. The company needs scapegoats for that chemical spill fiasco, for other messy cover-ups, and we can spin it that you manipulated evidence for personal gain. If you sign a confession, name yourself as the culprit, we'll let you walk away. Quietly, no bullet, no body, are we clear? Adam's heart thrummed. This was blackmail. They wanted a sacrificial lamb to appease the authorities or the press. If he complied, they'd bury him in legal ruin. If he refused, he'd just vanish tonight. He weighed his slim chances. Maybe he could tackle Armistead, but a single bullet would end it. Irene looked petrified, as though hoping he'd choose the lesser evil. Outside, the wind keened, and thunder rumbled in the distance. He thought of the families from the chemical spill, of how the corporation had deflected blame, and how he'd been complicit. He thought of all the missing people who'd come through this place, who might have refused to sign away their souls, paid with their lives. Something in him snapped. The quiet shame turned to a cold fury. He'd done so many things for the company's benefit, told himself it was just business. Now he saw, with raw clarity, the cost. He feigned a nod. "Fine," he murmured. "I'll sign." Armistead lowered his weapon slightly, reaching into his suit pocket for a folded document. That half-second was all Adam needed. He lunged, slamming into the man's gun arm. The weapon discharged with a flash, bullet embedding in the drywall behind them, a muffled echo rattling the hidden room. Adam seized Armistead's wrist, twisting. The gun clattered to the ground. Irene screamed, cowering against the dresser. The two men grappled, silhouettes thrashing. Armistead was stronger than he looked, landing a punch that nearly buckled Adam's knees. Pain exploded behind Adam's eyes, but he fought through it. He rammed Armistead into the doorframe. A sickening crack reverberated. The man slid to the floor, unconscious or worse. Heartbeat roaring, Adam grabbed the fallen weapon. He turned to Irene, who stared at him in shock. "You can still leave," she stammered. "Go through the back exit. Drive away. He won't stop." Adam was panting. "Come with me." Tears slipped down her lined face. "I can't," she whispered. "The motel, these crimes, it's all I've known. I tried to help once before, told a traveler how to escape. They made sure I never left. I'm too old, too afraid." Her voice cracked. "But you, maybe you can get out, expose them, end it." He wanted to grab her hand, drag her to the car, but footsteps in the corridor shook him from that impulse. Doors opening, maybe more men. The shot had obviously drawn attention. If he lingered, he'd be overwhelmed. He gave Irene a final pleading look, but she shook her head in resignation. Adam fled into the hallway. Each corridor light flickered ominously, as if the motel itself was alive with protest. From behind him came muffled shouts. A figure in dark clothing emerged at the far end, brandishing something metallic. He sprinted the other way, heart hammering, rounding a corner behind the old laundry room. Just as Irene said, there was an exit door leading outside. He shot the bolt, shoved it open. An icy gust of wind and rain lashed his face. The storm had arrived in earnest. Lightning illuminated the deserted parking lot, turning the puddles into mirrors that reflected jagged forks of brilliance. He heard a door slam behind him. Armistead's backup, or perhaps Armistead himself if he'd regained consciousness. Adam gripped the stolen gun, adrenaline surging, and ran. He reached his car, fumbling for his keys. He prayed it would start. The engine coughed to life just as two figures bolted out from the motel's entrance, shouting. Gravel spat under the tires, the windshield wipers squeaking frantically. He tore onto the highway, breath coming in ragged gasps. The night stretched out in front of him like a yawning void. Rain pelted down, smearing the edges of his headlights. After a mile, he glanced at his rearview mirror, no headlights following. He tried to quell the tremor in his hands, tried to steady his breathing. His mind reeled with images of that hidden room, the pinned-up stories of missing guests, and the near-fatal confrontation. He could still taste the motel's stale air in the back of his throat. A cold, unwavering clarity settled over him. He was done running. If he kept silent, more people would vanish, more horrors covered up. Irene would remain trapped, and the cycle would go on. They might hunt him down, but he had evidence. Photographs on his phone, snaps of the guest book, of the newspaper clippings. He had Armistead's weapon. Even if the local police were compromised, he could try going higher. Anonymously, if needed. Perhaps the FBI, or a journalist with a thirst for corporate scandal. Yes, it meant risking everything, but he saw no other way. Lightning tore across the sky. In that strobe, he noticed a battered sign by the roadside. Next gas, 20 miles. An empty stretch of highway lay ahead. The Tilden Motel's sign was long behind him, lost in sheets of rain. He gripped the steering wheel, trying to assemble a plan. They'd expect him to flee, to vanish. But maybe he'd stop soon, find a payphone or a small police station. He would speak the truth, consequences be damned. He pressed the accelerator, determined. And as he drove on, wind howling, a single question echoed in his mind. Would anyone believe him? A roadside motel with a hidden room that didn't exist on paper, used by a powerful corporation to dispose of liabilities and secrets. It sounded absurd, like an urban legend. But he was living proof. And proof, he decided with a grim smile, was all he had left. Trees blurred in the darkness, and the road curved toward the faint glow of a distant town. Adam felt a flicker of hope in that glow, a promise that maybe he wasn't alone in the night. He caught his own reflection in the rearview mirror, eyes bloodshot, jaw clenched, hair plastered to his forehead by cold sweat and rain. There was no turning back. No more illusions of normalcy. The Tilden Motel and its room 11 might stay hidden for a while longer, but not forever. He resolved to shine light on that darkness, to break the cycle that had claimed so many. And as thunder rumbled overhead, he whispered into the emptiness of the car, "I'm sorry," a plea to the families he'd wronged, and perhaps an apology to himself for all the moral lines he had crossed. Now, at last, he was crossing back. He drove on into the storm, heart pounding, uncertain of where this path would lead, but finally certain of one thing. Silence was no longer an option. The battered key to room 11 lay on the passenger seat, a cold metal relic of unspoken crimes. In the distance, the horizon flickered with dawn's early light, like an omen or a lifeline beckoning him forward.